When COVID-19 struck America, we quickly found out how much we depend on India and China. Now, China is not an ally, but we've been trading with them for decades. What if I told you that we could have a closer trading partner that's an ally that won't charge as much, better quality, and get it here in half the time? What if I told you this? Oh, do I have your attention? Let's find out how, coming up next. I'm Eric Mitchell, and this is To The Point. One of the biggest lessons that we've learned during COVID-19 is our dependency on China for pharmaceutical goods. All of them. Like 98% of them are not made here, which is bananas. It's crazy. And when China was going through the Wuhan virus and COVID-19 was striking everywhere, we quickly found out that we were screwed up a creek without that paddle. But we do have answers. And our answers are, we can actually work here, and even in North America, with our neighbors to the north and our neighbors to the south. And even our friends in Central and South America can become great trading partners. Today's guest is here to tell you why we should not be putting any of our pharmaceutical goods over with our friends in China. And I use friends very loosely. They're not our friends. No. Not trade with China, but trade with our partners in Latin America, Europe, and our friends in Canada. I'm excited for today's guest, so get out your notebooks and pay attention. We're going to learn the other side of COVID-19 today and learn how we can protect our country with our neighbors and our allies. Let's welcome to the show my good friend and guest, Jonathan Gilinksi.
LifeFlip Media, the voice of the warrior class. Are you a veteran or patriotic business owner, author, musician, public speaker, or entrepreneur? Are you ready to take the next step towards success? Then look no further than LifeFlip Media, the voice of the warrior class. LifeFlip Media is the #1 veteran-owned PR firm in America. We use our mission-oriented approach to secure advertising and media exposure for your business, your brand, and your products. It's time to let LifeFlip Media put you on the cutting edge of success. LifeFlip Media, the voice of the warrior class.
And welcome to the show, Jonathan. How you doing today?
Doing well, Eric. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing good. So here we are. We're in month, I've lost track, like 4 of COVID-19. It's getting serious again out there, and I know you and we've had a lot of conversations offline. We've seen you on different radio shows here in America talking about the dependence that we have on China. And I think a lot of people figured out at the very beginning of COVID-19 how dependent we were on China. How long has this been going on? Like, is this something recent, or have we been caught behind the barrel with China for a long time? Because our second question for you is going to kind of lead into where else can we go with this. And I know that's how you've done it, because you're one of the few pharmaceutical guys I know that does nothing with China at all. So what's our dependency with China? What's going on there?
Well, let me address your first question. All of this happened in about 50 years, if you think about it. That's how quickly they were able to overtake the entire world and start producing medication and essential medication over in China. I mean, the way I see it is China ended up playing chess. We ended up playing checkers, short-term political gains. They saw a long-term strategy. They got government subsidies, low labor, cheap labor, and ended up transferring all of the intellectual property and intellect, for that matter, because if you take all the scientists, all the chemists that lost their jobs here in the U.S. and the jobs were transferred over to China, they took everything over there for very cheap labor. We taught them everything. They undercut prices for any other company manufacturing the same ingredient in the Western Hemisphere. By undercutting the prices, they drew these companies out of the market, and they pretty much ended up having a monopoly. And now they control the vast majority, if not more than 80% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients. So you might come to or go to your pharmacy to fill your prescription medication, and there might not be any medication available for you. And it's intertwined. I mean, it's much more elaborate than that, as you well know. And we can get into it if you'd like.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what I'm amazed by is this recent U.S. Department of Commerce study that found 97% of the antibiotics used in the U.S. now come from China. I mean, it's amazing how dependent we are on them, that they could literally cut us off. And, I mean, that's a problem.
But the interesting thing about the antibiotics is it's actually, yes, we're dependent on antibiotics, but antibiotics are being abused. And not only that, antibiotics themselves are primarily the cause for the antimicrobial resistant superbugs that we're seeing going on right now. And because of the lack of oversight in China, a lot of these antibiotic manufacturing facilities are dumping antibiotics into the environment, into livestock, even into what the water and the food supply. And this is creating an environment for these superbugs to emerge. There's no one overlooking. There's no responsibility. There's no environmental thoughtfulness when manufacturing. So not only do they control it, but the fact that they control it, they don't run it properly, is creating a lot of these superbugs that you're starting to see, that you've seen with the virus, that you're going to start seeing with other viruses already popping up, especially the swine flu H1N1 that came up, and today was a beautiful one, the bubonic plague.
I guess it's better than the killer hornets.
Expect more of those.
So let me ask you this. So, okay, if we didn't work with China, obviously I don't think the U.S. can handle all of this on its own. Obviously, you have to have trading partners. I know that your background is you are Colombian by descent. So
Actually, I'm not. I was born here in the U.S. in Miami, but I grew up in Colombia.
Awesome. So, I mean, Latin America, I'm familiar with companies that are down there. I've done some work down there. I know that there are companies that are using it. Some amazing veteran-owned companies like Combat Flip-Flops have open factories that were old cartel factories, that they're doing amazing things, and their products are being made down there by the amazing people of Colombia, which is very amazing culture, amazing people that they work really hard. I know Microsoft has a big push down there. You're seeing IBM down there when IBM was big, but IBM's halfway decent now. They're huge still in Latin America. Obviously, the soda companies. So is Latin America a great place for us to trade with? I think it is. I'd like your thoughts on it and why it would be better than using China.
Oh, first things first. If you look at the population of the Western Hemisphere, let's just take the Western Hemisphere, including Canada, U.S., Mexico, and all the way down to the Ushuaia Peninsula of Argentina, we're talking about 1 billion people. If you take the population of China, we're talking about 1.5 billion people. Doesn't that make sense already, that you want to leverage some of your production to this part of the world where it's less populated? Number one. Number two, you have a very, very good, educated, talented workforce in Latin America. And a lot of this workforce is fluent in English. So conducting business with someone that speaks the same language as you is going to be much easier. Try doing that in other parts of the world. Sure. Number two, geographic proximity. If I were to board a flight tomorrow and want to audit my facility in Colombia, surprise audit, I want to see how you guys are doing, I'll be there in 2.5 hours. It's a 2.5 hour plane ride. So proximity, geographic proximity allows you to have oversight, allows you to go see the operations that are manufacturing whatever it is. In this case, we're talking about medicine. So it's much easier to look after these factories. Plus, you don't have governments that are opposed to having U.S. regulators come in, as they do in China. Or other places. If you consider the fact that we wanted to go look at what was going on with COVID-19, we were blocked. You're not going to have that. So you have geographical proximity. You'll be allowed in. You have a very well qualified intellectual workforce that's fluent in English, right? The other factor is the dollar as it stands right now is relatively strong. So it goes a long way, right? So you will be able to manufacture at a reasonable cost if you move some of the production down there. Yes, and you're right. You're not going to be able to handle all of the production that you want here in the U.S., even though the moment that China entered the World Trade Organization, there was about 5 million jobs that were lost and about 50,000 manufacturing facilities that were shuttered, right? Think about this. You have an issue at the southern border. Everybody wants to come to this country. Why does everybody want to come to this country? This is a land of prosperity. If you're able to put in if you're able to allocate a percentage of the 170 billion, which is the API market's value of 2019, to these Latin American countries, what you're essentially doing is you're pumping money into these economies. You're creating jobs, and this is going to actually help with your issue at the southern border. So I might as well just giving you about 5-6 different reasons, right?
Yeah.
I can go on.
I mean, I love it. I mean, but I have other questions because it's going to come up that, like every part of the world, COVID-19 has obviously hit parts of Latin America really hard. We've all seen Brazil. We saw the news. Even today, their president coming down and testing positive for COVID-19. So my question is this. With Latin America affected by the coronavirus, how will that affect production? If we're able to start doing this move, which I think America is ready for it, poised for it, I think it's one of the few things that both parties, when we talk about DC, and at the end of the day, we all know it's the bureaucracy and the red tape we have to get through to get it done, and you're leading the way from the private sector. But to answer this question, basically, how will what's going on with COVID-19 in Latin America affect production if we were able to start doing this?
Listen, Eric, the entire world is affected by this. The way I see it is how quickly we can manufacture and how quickly we can get a 40-foot container into the docks here in Miami. And that's usually 7 to 10 days, right? And that's on top of the speed that we manufacture versus 45 to 60 days we have to sail across the Pacific. So the speed of manufacturing, and again, the geographical proximity allows us to work much faster and allows us to look at Latin America as a potential region for us to at least move some, if not most, of our production down. The fact that COVID has hit, yes, it has hit, and it's hit everywhere, but there's processes and protocols in place, and there's ways that we can have oversight as to how things are being handled and managed there because of the ease of travel, the ease of communication with these different institutions and companies that are down there.
Perfect. I love that. And I think that's important because folks, number one, forget how close Latin America really is. I mean, you said it perfect. 2.5-hour flight from here to Colombia. That's crazy to think. I mean, it's super closer than flying to China. I can tell you there's no...
It's actually, sorry to interrupt you, but it's actually, for me, the majority of the time, and I tend to travel once a month down there, it's easier for me to get down to Colombia than it is to get up to LaGuardia.
That's crazy. That's an amazing stat right there. There you go. Shout out LaGuardia. I think you're the first person to say something positive about LaGuardia I've ever talked to.
I don't think it's positive, but all right.
You gave him. So let me ask you this: as a business owner, obviously your business is based here in the U.S. So how do you rate the government's handling of the coronavirus so far? I know this is a question that's not political at all. I'm wondering as a business owner, because we all have opinions depending on what we do, on how we've rated the government as a whole. I mean, how do you rate their performance so far?
Let me give you my 2 cents here. I think we acted too soon, too fast. And what happened was that you locked up people in their house for 2-3 months, and you create what I call pent-up anger, and then you unleash them and you open it up. You're gonna have consequences. The timing of it was off. The shutdown should have been in sync with the wave, right? Yeah. Rather than jumping based on what others were doing, number one. Number two, a lot of contradictory advice was given. When in February, during my last travel, I was the only guy wearing a mask at MIA, Miami International Airport. I was being looked like some weirdo. A mask is a mask. A mask is known to cover. A mask is known to help, and you just wear a mask. Why would you not have indicated to everybody wear a mask from day one, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to add into the equation the fact that we're the greatest nation on earth, right? We're not a communist nation where we lock people in the houses and we take away their rights and their liberty and everything else. So you got to balance that out. So to answer your question, I mean, there was a warning. We could have been prepared. We could have listened to the experts, and we could have perhaps timed it. Mm-hmm. But then again, this is someone that is seeing this for the first time in their life. Nothing like this has ever happened. And then again, I would have applied the more practical aspects of any plan to it, which is just cover your mouth. And you do that when you go into hospitals. Why? Because there's a lot of infections and viruses and bacteria going on in hospitals. That's what you do when you have a virus and you have a bacteria. You cover your mouth. Yeah, you cover your mouth. You cover your mouth when you sneeze. It's common sense. Wow. So just use common sense. So
it is funny that we are the big movement in 2020 has been telling people to wash their hands and cover their face when they sneeze. It's pretty weird that we're telling adults that. That's like common sense from like childhood. I know all of my kids. Now it feels like we're reminding people. But anyway, so let's talk about this from a business side for you. So how do business owners keep afloat during these hard times? I know they're trying to open back up. A lot of states are shutting back down. Obviously, the worst affected are our restaurant and bars across the country. That is the first thing. All governors are shutting down. I know California was not the first. Texas was, followed by California, and you're seeing even New Jersey has recently done it where they've closed indoors dining and bars.
And Florida will close tomorrow as well.
So
I have friends in the restaurant business, and they're restaurateurs. I am not. I can't give you advice as a restaurateur because that's not my forte. This is an event that has to somehow trigger significant creativity. It has to bring out the entrepreneurial side of a lot of these restaurateurs. Unfortunately, many of them are not going to be able to survive it, and it's extremely, extremely sad to see the amount of jobs that are going to be lost. There's only so much that you can sustain by shipping, by sending takeouts, and having people pick up. So to give you advice as to how to survive not being in the restaurant business, it's very hard. I do think there's opportunities to reinvent yourself, to come together as an industry, to be able to cut costs, to be able to do deliveries and takeouts without having so much overhead, without having so much restaurant. There's definitely opportunity for you to be able to negotiate your rents with your landlords. So there's things that can be done. But again, a lot of individuals are afraid of contracting it by eating food from places that are not their home kitchens.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, we have seen that across the country. So let me ask you this, Jonathan. One of the big things we've been talking about on our show, and a lot of Americans are talking about, is what founders, CEOs, and leaders are doing for their staff during COVID-19. A lot of companies had furloughs, people have been around, and it's really pushing CEOs and leaders. It's exposing the bad ones. Clearly, you're seeing a lot of people coming out going, oh my God, here we are, I have no childcare, I have nothing, and it's like some bosses just flat don't care. It's like, here's the bottom line, this is what you have to do. It's an interesting give and take because childcare shutting down isn't necessarily any of our fault. That's an overreaction that we did, that they're still learning, CDC and all those things. So out of most people's control is childcare. It's not something. It's like kids being out of school. I've got two, and I have no idea when they're going back to school. No one's told us. We're voting on different plans. But so what are you doing for your staff? As a leader of a company with some amazing team members, what are you doing for your staff during these times?
It's a really good question. What this virus did was pretty much accelerate what was bound to happen, right? These commutes on 95 or 105 or whatever interstate you have to take for an hour a day each way, 2 hours a day, to sit in front of a computer and put numbers in and maybe have one or two meetings doesn't make any sense. So you are now being forced to implement technology that some companies, many of which are in the space similar to ours in the e-commerce space, have had already in place. You're noticing that you don't have to have a 9 to 5, get in your car and drive to work an hour each day to be successful. You need to have accountability, and you need to have KPIs, and you need to have a team that will be responsible for the tasks that they're assigned. Doesn't matter what part of the world they are. You've seen people working remotely from way back. So what am I doing for my team? My team is allowed to work remotely. We do come to the office since we have the operations. We have a lot of demand right now for the product, so we have to oversee the logistics. But the way we do it is we do intervals. So only a couple of us come in on Monday, some come in on Tuesday, and we rotate. Everybody has a fixed time that we meet 2 or 3 times a week. We have Zoom calls. We hold ourselves accountable. If we don't, then we call each other out. And by doing that, we become much more efficient. And I've seen productivity increase because there's not so much time being wasted on going into people's office and talking to people and schmoozing by the water cooler.
I love that you say that because that's true. I think more work gets done, and I've been reading these surveys that people are seeing that the traditional 8-hour workday or 12-hour workday has actually been proven to be cut shorter because people without distractions sitting at home, when they go into a room or they say they don't have multiple rooms in their house, they shut the door and they entertain their kids or whatever. If they team up on it, shut the door, put headphones on, they can cram through work that used to take them all day. Some people are saying that they could shave 2 days off of work because they're able to get through all of their emails, everything that they need to get through in such, because there aren't the distractions, the water cooler and the typical.
Absolutely, but keep in mind, if you are working from home, then be prepared to answer a Slack message at 6, 7 o'clock at night.
Sure.
Be prepared to get a message at 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning. The 9 to 5 is abolished,
yeah.
But there's a new modus operandi. You get to write and contact each other at whatever hour, at whatever time, if something needs attention.
Awesome. And I think people agree to that. I think more and more people are happy with that. They have the freedom to make those appointments. If you can go to a dentist appointment, get your hair cut, you could go do those things. But you should be able to respond. I mean, we expect it from our team. Obviously, we've always kind of done that where I've never monitored hours. Like, hey, when you get your work done, but if I ping you at 8 o'clock.
Right.
Obviously 8 o'clock my time, no, don't answer if you're on the East Coast, that's 11 o'clock. But if I ping you after hours, I shouldn't get like, dude, why are you bugging me? It's like, if I didn't hear from you at 2 p.m., I'm not hounding you. But if I have a question, please respond in Slack. And so far, no issues. And I think a lot of people like the freedom of, it builds a lot of trust. I think some traditional employers and traditional founders are struggling with especially if they're micromanagers, they struggle with it. They're like, oh my God, I can't see what you're doing.
Absolutely. But keep in mind, Eric, so there's the flip side of the coin. If you're in manufacturing and you have personnel overseeing quality, overseeing machines, overseeing technical, you need staff to come in. To have staff, you have a hierarchy, you have managers, you have managers, you have the quality people. So you do need, in certain instances, for people to come to work, especially if we're discussing and we're talking about bringing manufacturing back. You're going to want that.
Yeah.
But if you're coming in and you're part of the marketing team or you're part of the sales team or you are part of the accounting team, and you can run and input numbers from your home the same that you're going to do from the office, or do sales from your phone, which is we now have supercomputers in the palm of our hand. If you're able to do that, then it's not necessary. So you can always have essential workers come in, non-essential workers can be more productive because they're working around the clock without having to shower, change, get on 95, get on accidents, and all this other fun stuff that happens during your commute.
I love that you brought that up. So before you go, I want to cover this because you are a phenomenal business leader, and I want to talk about businesses. Let's talk about how those businesses can stay afloat. And I know you and I have talked off camera about this, talking about what vendors can do with their payments, and you even have some good thoughts on what our friends at Amazon, who, no matter if it's a pandemic or not, are absolutely killing it. You know, our friend Jeff Bezos, not only did he get a divorce to start 2020, and he lost half of his assets, which still he was a billionaire, and his ex-wife is a billionaire. But I just read that he made all that money back and 10x'd it because of the pandemic. So I know you have some thoughts on Amazon. So let's talk about how companies can reduce unnecessary expenditures and you know, some tips that you have for how they can do that.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you bring this up. Amazon is a phenomenal company. It really shows what we're capable of doing in this country, and no questions, hands down, a fascinating company. But listen, they could cut some slack to small businesses. They can reduce these seller fees. They are charging an absurd amount of fees for small businesses to sell on their platforms. If you cut a small percentage of those fees, you're pretty much giving back what the payroll protection plan gave you by reducing the fees. And I'm not saying, listen, Amazon, don't charge us anymore, but reduce the fees for the remainder of the year for another 6-7 months. Allow small businesses like ours to flourish by reducing some of these fees, right? Number one. Number two, no one's driving, no one's flying, so gas is cheap. Call the post office, call FedEx, call UPS, tell them you want your rates lower. They're obviously offsetting the cost because they're paying less for gasoline, so why don't they transfer that cost on to you, the consumer, right? Number three, Stripe, PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. They make a living out of small businesses like us. It's time they reduce their fees too, from 2 or 3%. Bring it down, eliminate them. Give us a grace period of 6-7 months, the remainder of the year, without processing fees. Because without small businesses, without businesses alike, there is no Visa, MasterCard, American Express. So they have to sacrifice. They have a lot of money. And going back to Amazon, I'm pretty sure they'll be just fine if they're able to waive all these fees.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on folks with their CRMs and ERPs and marketing software? You know, we are talking about manufacturing. I know we're getting people back to work, but what's your thoughts on, I mean, should folks be finding different platforms to work on? I mean, we all know that there's I'm not going to mention them just because I don't want any heat from their users, but there's a very big CRM out there. Great company. I'm a big fan of their CEO and founder, but it's a really expensive platform. So when it comes to manufacturers and what you're doing, any last thoughts on where folks should cut? They should cut corners or look for something a little should companies be doing that?
I got you, and I know what you're talking about. Yes, they're expensive, but there's a lot of options, fortunately, and you're going to see a resurgence of these options come about now, simply because this is the future. You do not want to cut corners where the future is headed, and the future is headed in platforms and technology. You do want the features. You want to, obviously, what is free is only going to get you so far, but you definitely want the features, and you definitely want to deploy technology. But you might want to discuss with each company what their features are, what their costs are, and compare them to others. Compare them to others, because a lot of these companies offer the same features. Yeah. And if you're able to identify exactly what it is that you need, you might not need to be paying extra for specific features that are intricate and elaborate, and they're not applicable to your business.
That makes sense.
So look into these different platforms.
Oh, awesome.
Compare them. And you're going to see more and more of them. And we can go into platforms like Zoom, Skype, GoToMeeting, Slack, WhatsApp. They're all video conferencing. Each one has its pros and its cons. You analyze each one, and then you pick the one that's more suited for your business.
I like that. I think that's solid advice, because so many small business owners and even growing businesses are trying to see where can they make those cuts, right? I mean, you don't want... I think one of the big things that I've seen, and I know you're one of these leaders that falls under this category, is you're willing to sacrifice yourself, your own salary, your own pay. I mean, and I'm on record as saying the same thing for my own company, that I'm going to make sure I don't want to lay anybody off. And we've been blessed that we haven't had to do that. I know some other companies that are the same thing where the CEO's like, look, I'm not going to take it. It was easy. It reminded me of startup days again where I wasn't getting paid anyways and it was going back into the company. But I'd rather make sure people are earning a living that are working hard for doing that. So, I mean, what's your thoughts on before we close, like 2 or 3 things that business owners can do to make sure their company stays afloat during these tough times?
Take care of your employees, they'll take care of you. Number one. Right? Take care of your customers. Your customers are your number one asset. Right? Mm-hmm. And deliver quality product. Stop putting low cost and cheap materials in front of quality, right? So customers, first of all, your employees, your customers, and then focus on quality, deliver quality. People are getting tired of these cheap, ineffective products and services that are offered there without real customer support, without real traceability. You're gonna have to mitigate that and find a way to be more reliable, right?
Yeah. I like that. That's perfect. Well, that is great. Jonathan, we want to thank you for coming on today. You've given us so much insight. And it's actually good to have an expert who has never had to trade with China and has an effective method. I know that's what people like hearing because we're so caught up in the media is not going to go out and run out and tell all of us this is the fix because China's involved in so much in our country, in our trade. And I know we have tariffs, but we need to be safe. It's better to work with our allies. And I'm sorry, but a flight that's easier to get, like you said, it's easier to get to Colombia than it is to LaGuardia, which is very true. Try leaving LaGuardia and just getting to Manhattan is a journey all by itself. I never knew that an airport right across the river was so difficult. It's like, I've had friends actually, true story, land at LaGuardia and land at JFK, and the JFK people, we beat the LaGuardia people.
No, I've been down that path before. Listen, we can get into the China scenario down the road, but it's complicated. Point is, if we've been able to do it for over 40 years, so can anybody else.
Absolutely.
There's no need to buy from your adversary when you have loyal allies that are actually also going through a hard time. They could use the economic boost.
That is an understatement. So I want to thank you for joining us today. We'll have to have you back
Thank you.
When China pops back up, or if we have any questions. Obviously, we'll have you back on from time to time to cover this topic. You are the resident expert, and when we have our Latin America questions, we're coming to you. You seem to know more than we know. So thank you, Jonathan, for joining. And if anybody wants to connect with Jonathan and find out more about what Jonathan's doing, simply swipe down on our YouTube or on this feed while you're watching, and you'll be able to click and find out about Jonathan's company. Make sure to follow them on social media and ask them any questions that you may have, or if your company would like to work with Jonathan and his brand. So thank you, Jonathan, for joining us today, and we'll be back after these messages. Thank you for watching this episode of To The Point. As always, I'm your host, Eric Mitchell, and we thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, if you know someone that we should be interviewing on our show, or you'd like to be a guest on our show, feel free to email us at hello@tothepointtv.com. We'd love to have you as a guest on our show. Please go ahead and feel free to follow us on Twitter at ToThePointTV. We'd love to see you on Twitter. Also, make sure to follow us on Instagram. We're huge fans of Instagram here at To The Point. So give us a follow at To The Point and a like and a share so you can see the guests that are coming up on IG. And that is at ToThePointTV. It's not .com, it's just at ToThePointTV. So confusing with all these names taken. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, you know what we're going to get ready to go. But before you do that, if you're a fan of Facebook and you spend a lot of time on there, go give our Facebook page a like and a follow and share it with your friends. And keep in mind, if you can't get to your YouTube, you can always watch us live at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern weekdays. We appreciate to see you there. And as always, my favorite peeps, you're here on the YouTube, and we love you here on YouTube. So make sure that you drop in and you can see every episode and never miss an episode, right? Because if you smash that subscribe button, give it a like, and flick that bell, you flick that bell, you get notified before everyone else when we drop the latest episode. or subscription. And as a reminder, all of our segments and shows go live weekdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. So you will be the first to catch them, and you don't want to miss them. Go check out our library. They are broken down by hashtags, so you will never miss an episode. On behalf of our entire team here at To The Point, we want to thank you for tuning in, because if it wasn't for viewers like you, we wouldn't have a show. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Eric Mitchell. Be safe, be strong, be smart, and God bless America.
Let's get to the point.